Welcome to the Future of Work podcast. Today's guest is Adam Riggs, the founder and CEO of Frameable.com. Frameable is one of the leading digital virtual office providers globally and currently services the likes of Amazon, IBM, Bayer, Samsung, NASA, Harvard University, and a number of other major companies and institutions. He is also an experienced executive and investor in e-commerce, finance, and media companies. Prior to Frameable, Adam was the Presidential Innovation Fellow at the U.S. Treasury Department and a subject matter expert at the U.S. State Department, and the first president and CFO of Shutterstock.com from 2005 to 2010. In the last 20 years, he has built, invested in, and advised companies achieving a full range of outcomes from successful exits to disappointing bankruptcies, and has learned a great deal from each one of them. Adam, welcome. Really grateful to have your insights today. Before we get into any questions, though, can you define what you believe a virtual office to be? So there's no confusion. It's a widely used term, and I think that your use is quite unique.
Of course. Thank you, Frank, for having me today. I agree with you that it is confusing. Virtual offices, if you search for them in an internet search engine, you'll find things like physical mail boxes that you can rent and phone forwarding services so that you can pretend to have a big physical presence possibly, or a big presence even if you don't, if you're smaller. But when we use the term virtual office, what we mean is a place that you can come to that is a virtual space where you can do your work, usually with colleagues. So it's not just video meeting software. It goes beyond video meeting software. It includes many of the features that people are used to in video meeting software, such as screen sharing. And, of course, you can have your camera on or off, your microphone on or off, all kinds of familiar features. But we're really going one step further and trying to expand people's sense of space while they're using virtual software to do their work.
Well, it's interesting. I loved your comment about the other virtual office, because you see a little gray hair here. And back in 1994, another friend and I from our industry, he has a rather large company, IWG, and I got together and talked about the confusion of various products in our industry. And we decided that if we both called our business identity plans and corporate plans, et cetera, virtual offices, we could create a new term and a new product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for better or worse, I am the coiner of the phrase in the way you defined it earlier.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that story. And I think that you have done the world a big service, because by that definition, there's a lot of opportunity. There's been a lot of opportunity in the last 10, 20, 30 years to help people facilitate their remote physical lives and still be reachable. Yeah.
Well, it is. We believe it combines the combination of people, place, and technology into a highly flexible service agreement.
Yeah.
And those three components together create the core of the product. It's interesting. Your definition is totally different. However, it combines the same three things.
Agreed.
Place and technology. Different ratio though.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fun. When we first defined this, we said, it's like making bread. You have three ingredients.
Yeah.
Flour, salt, and some water. And you've got bread. Now, how many types of bread are there when we describe bread? And what you've done is created an entirely different loaf, if you will, to be provided to a very interesting cross-section of customers that our virtual office rarely touches.
Mm-hmm.
So same two elements, or the same three elements in different ratios, but addressing completely different marketplaces.
Agreed.
And that's really, I think, the beauty of what you're doing, and it quite a interesting contribution as you go forward. So, thank you for putting up with my definition, and I appreciate yours as well.
Absolutely.
On that. When we talk about virtual offices in today's world, we're talking about hybrid work, and a lot of that is right sizing a company's real estate investment, and how their people work within that investment. Why did you decide to go digital with your virtual office solution?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been working remotely, by which I mean I've worked in a place that's physically separate from many of my colleagues for a very long time. Like more than 20 years, and
Yeah.
depending on how you count. And I remember when there wasn't a reliable video meeting solution. I remember when a live video box next to another live video box was really a technological achievement, worth talking about on its own. It was just phone calls before that, phone calls and emails, first phone calls, then phone calls and emails, and then you had these video boxes. But what we are excited about is the opportunity to go beyond the video boxes. It doesn't mean that what we're doing doesn't include them. It just means that we're trying to use the technology to help the people connect in a different way. And for our company, during the pandemic, our lease just happened to, we had a physical office and our lease just happened to be up. It was an easy decision not to renew it because we weren't going to be able to use it. And we quickly realized that we really had all the tools and vision that we needed to build a compatible, sort of easy to use corollary experience that could replace the physical office. It's just meeting software is not on its own enough to replace a physical
Agree.
office.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Yeah, you have to go beyond just the meeting software, because an office is more than just meetings. It's actually a place where a full spectrum of interaction types take place on a daily basis. So if you want to build a virtual corollary to that, if you want to build a virtual version of that, it can't just be a place where meetings can take place over and over and simultaneously. It has to be a place where serendipitous interactions can happen, where collisions can happen, where you can find yourself pulled into things that you weren't planning on making a contribution to, but you can make a meaningful contribution, just like in a physical office.
Well, I think that's really important, and we share the experience of having worked virtually from our teams for long periods of time. In fact, I remember the first video system that we had was in 1984, if you can believe it. And my video system wouldn't talk about anybody else's, so we always had to go through a third party or two third parties to connect those systems. So it was rarely used and very expensive, and today we don't even think about it.
No.
So wonderful progression we've made along with those. But your point about interactions and collisions and spontaneous work, all of that doesn't lend itself well to most of the video structures that we see today. Video alone is not the answer. It's just one of the tools within the answer.
Yeah, agreed. And I would say I'd like to focus in our product. We use as one of our most important sort of design, core cornerstones, the idea of peripheral vision. So when you go into a physical space, whether it's a hotel lobby or an office building, you are taking in a huge amount of information that's relevant to your decision-making process through your peripheral vision. You're focusing on something, but you're taking in other information and you're using that. Same when you're driving. They say when you're driving, you make one decision per second on average. You see a car stopped, and it's supposed to be stopped. You see a car parked and you don't see a driver, so that's fine. You see a car rolling to a stop sign and you're not sure they're going to actually honor it, so you have to make decisions every time you take in information. Well, in office space is similar. You see people working together with the door open, that means one thing. You see people working together with the door closed, that means something different. You see an office with the shades drawn, that means something different. You see a bunch of people in the cafe, getting a cup of coffee or tea, that means something. So being able to take in this information is very important. And it's also it's not just important for, getting work done efficiently. It's also important for feeling satisfied as a human. So the problem with video meeting software is that you don't really collect any of that information. When you're in a meeting with someone and it's a bilateral exchange, there's nothing that is telling you anything about the other people in your office. So if we're going to create a virtual office experience that's compelling, we have to figure out how to enable the bilateral discussions, the one-on-one or two-on-two, whatever discussions with small groups and individuals. But we also have to, just like in the real world, give people peripheral information that can be actionable. And that is a difficult thing to do. I think we are way ahead of others in terms of our execution, but ultimately all video office products are going to have to figure out how to do this, or else the users are just going to continue to feel disconnected from one another.
Well, I agree. One of the things that I found interesting, as you know from our prior conversation, and so the audience knows, you and I chatted beforehand about a week or so ago about some of our experiences. And one of the comments that I made to you after reviewing Frameable is that we've looked at just about every technology-based virtual office product that comes along. And almost the great majority of them are designed to look like a floor plan of an office.
Yeah.
And there's benefit to that. You can see the layout, the lay of the land, so to speak. You've chosen to organize your virtual work environment more like a corporate department's org chart, if I can use that analogy, so that you can see who's working where with whom when, as opposed to just who's happens to be at their desk with their door open.
Right.
And so one of the things I found fascinating was in your virtual office, which is primarily for larger clients and institutions, as opposed to individual solopreneurs like we serve a lot of.
Yep.
You were very organized on a departmental or a workflow basis, as opposed to a physical basis. You weren't trying to emulate the office so much as emulate the activities within the office.
Yes.
And I found that very, when you talk about interactions, when you talk about video, I found that was ability, and I thought of my own problems with video. I said, one of the problems is that we have is we're in the middle of a meeting. Hey, we need Harry. We need Susie. We need somebody in this meeting. Where are they? What are they doing? How do we get them in? Who's going to invite them? Are they going to pay any attention to their email on the invite? All this stuff goes on, and half the time you can't get them into the meeting, so you reschedule a meeting. In the organizational structure that you've used, it seems as if, well, that problem hasn't been 100% solved. I don't think it can be, but you've moved a long ways towards coordinating the flow of work, not just the place of work in a virtual office. And I found that very, very exciting to think about it, because it was really a next dimension. It sounds like I'm pitching your darn company, and I'm not.
Well,
I look for differences, and I did identify that one difference as being a next step. I was very intrigued by it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Which is why we're talking today.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that very much, and you're exactly right. We tried to design an environment that was flexible enough that if people wanted to visually organize it according to the workflow, they could absolutely do that. If you want to have project rooms, you can do that. If you want to have private offices, you can do that, any mix of these things. And any amount of the org chart and the workflow and people's personal preferences can all be honored.
Well, it seems like it also has the benefit of being more inclusive, creating greater accessibility, not just individuals, but to the teams overall, and to expand the benefits of how team building actually works. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of great research about remote work and the benefits of remote work. A lot of it comes from Nick Bloom at Stanford University. I encourage your listeners to check out his research. But one of the things that he's found is that better diversity, equity, and inclusion results are a clear benefit of remote work and successful hybrid approaches. Employees are happier, they're more productive, if it's done right, and we can talk about what that means. As we mentioned, it allows companies to right-size their real estate investment and save some money there if they have physical investments to manage. And then the DEI piece is really it's something that extends beyond what most people probably think of when they think of DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really everyone benefits because of the diversity of perspectives is what helps a company that's solving difficult challenges. It's the diversity of perspectives that really helps them solve it in a special way, design a special product or feature, or bring something to market that that people hadn't thought of before. Diversity of perspectives is always worthwhile, and remote work just makes it easier for a broader range of people to make a meaningful contribution.
It's funny when we look at diversity as an issue. I'll go back, as I often do, many years when we first created our first network of centers globally, and we were competing against a large single branded group. Mm-hmm. All the trim was blue and all the coffee cups matched globally. Mm-hmm. That was their brand. And our brand, we made a decision that says we can't compete with that. Mm-hmm. 5-star in India is different than 5-star in London. Mm-hmm. So we thought we're going to be dealing with the local environment. And mm-hmm. we decided that what we learned from all of our local environments and applied universally gave us more strength. And we are quite competitive as a result of that. So one of our phrases we used internally was that our differences are our strength, not our similarities. So we were branded, unbranded, and we had a variety of facilities, but only one quality of service, rather than one type of facility with who knows what the heck the service is. Yeah. And so we really focused only on service, but it gave us something to strive towards. And I think as we look at the DEI issues of today, a lot of that same thought is you learn from diversity. Yeah. You don't have to deal with diversity. It's an opportunity for learning, and that what you learn does make you better.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot there that you've pressed forward with that can really make a difference overall. And so it's really coming down to a lot of your modeling, a lot of your structures is around employee well-being, removing scheduled meeting fatigue if you can by creating spontaneity and collaboration, et cetera. How does the bottom line of that hit a company? Mm-hmm. Practical point of view, you're going to ask someone to invest in your technology and to use your technology to manage certain aspects of their company. So you're asking them to invest in you, yep. in your company. And how do you see the bottom line, not just on your products, but on all of the aspects of remote work? There's so many big CEOs today, big name CEOs, are saying back to the office or else. It's like they got blinders on or something, or they're living in an alternative reality. Yeah. That just doesn't make sense with what we have learned. What you've learned, what I've learned, they haven't learned yet.
Yeah.
How how do you bring this bottom line issue to a company that has to answer to their shareholders?
Yeah, like all companies do. And even if you're a nonprofit, you'll have a board of directors and you'll have contributors that you need to answer to. So there are always stakeholders. Um, it's not surprising that in the last 2.5 years we've experienced, again, according to Professor Bloom out of Stanford, if you look at the trajectory of remote work from 1965, which is the first year that they had data, up to 2019 as one period of time, and then from 2020 through the present, we have experienced, in terms of rate of change, we've experienced decades of growth in a few years' time. So it's not surprising that many leaders are struggling with, they're either uncomfortable or confused, or some combination. I believe that when a leader, or when the leadership of a company says, everybody come back to work and we're not discussing it anymore, they're making an assessment that's based on a very incomplete set of alternatives, because for them, the pandemic period forced them into a technology stack which was never meant to replace what the pandemic forced us to replace, which is the physical office. So they are unaware that technology can actually deliver something better than remote work, which is calendar invitation after calendar invitation after calendar invitation, each one with a separate link, all of which are disconnected from one another, and as a result make the person who's using this technology feel disconnected from their colleagues. So the benefits, to the ROI question, it goes beyond managing the real estate, reducing the real estate footprint, reducing the environmental footprint, all of which are good. It actually should start with the well-being of the employees. Employees that are happy, that are more engaged, that are able to have a better balance at work, are going to do better work, and as a result, the customers and the end beneficiaries of that organization's products and services, they're going to get a better result. So talent acquisition and retention is really where it starts. Savings in real estate, savings in the environment, in the lower environmental impact, these are very important. But in those ways, things change much more slowly. Whereas for people's expectations about, what does it mean to live a balanced life? I work really hard. And now I've learned in the last couple of years that I don't need to go to my office 5 days a week in order to do my work. One of Professor Bloom's most interesting findings is that the average savings on a work from home day versus a commuting day is 70 minutes. 70 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. What they have found up until now is that right now, about half of that is spent working more.
Yes.
And about half of that is spent on cooking, time with your children, your own physical health, family time, etc. So it's truly a win-win-win, but it is very different from the way it was in 2019. And it also challenges the managers of the companies to go beyond simply, whatever tactics were working for them in 2019 when they were walking around the office. They have to, in a way, evolve their management styles and do their best to meet the employees where they are. And if they do that, then I think there's savings available for everyone.
Well, it's funny. There's an old saying, and I think was originally applied in the military, that once you see the eyes of the enemy, all strategy changes.
Yes.
And there's a lot of variations on that same saying.
I like Mike Tyson's version. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face.
In the face, absolutely. Or actually, you could say Evander Holyfield's, everybody has a plan until they get their ear bitten. And, it's any number of ways. But it is like that. And I think a lot of people really haven't figured out that they've seen the eyes of the enemy yet. So they don't know what their new strategy is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Overall. The other thing that we've all said, I've said it 1,000, 10,000 times, I'm sure you have too, and you've heard it a million times, is, oh, if I just had another hour in the day.
Yeah.
We have gained another hour in the day.
Yeah.
We honestly have, and if we can apply that to the productivity of work-life balance, both directions, not just one direction,
Yeah.
then if you think about it, we look at economies and we say, oh, the U.S. economy is only going to grow 0.02 this year. Well, if you added an extra hour in the day to everybody, half an hour in the day to everybody,
Yeah.
what would that economic growth actually look like?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things here, and you mentioned sustainability from a ecological point of view. There are some benefits there. I think they're overcounted. Oh, we don't have to commute anymore. Yeah, but you actually got to heat your whole house instead of going to the office. So there's some exchanges there that haven't really been well defined. But I think in our hearts we say we know it's better. We just don't know how much yet.
Yeah.
But that brings about, if you look at office use today, on average, Mondays are used about 40%. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are used about 60 to 70%. Thursdays about 50%. Fridays back to about 40%.
Yeah.
So overall, you've got a 35% loss in the utilization of office space, which was already only 60% efficient. Okay. So that means that companies that get it will be the first ones to give up their leases. You did, we have overall, and distribute their workforce. And I think I like distributed work more than remote work.
Agreed.
There's nothing remote about the way I work with my team. We're close, we're tight, we're aligned. We're just distributed.
Yes.
So we have a don't put all eggs in one basket, don't put all brains in one building approach. And we think we do better by that. But when you look at this core cities that are commuter dependent, New York is a perfect example. London's another perfect example. They're commuter dependent cities. When the commuters start coming in, that really affects the city.
Yes.
They're not doing their laundry downtown anymore. They're doing it out by their house. They're not buying lunch. They're not doing this. So there's a reduction in marketplace and office use. And as companies start changing the commitments to new office space, that's going to leave a lot of vacancy in the cities.
Absolutely.
You see cities repurposing themselves, redesigning themselves into the future of work to fit this new model. How do you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in this side of it, although I'm not a commercial real estate expert. But it's easy to see from the research that that the work from home or the distributed workforce, the implications of distributed workforce have will have a huge potential impact on commercial rents, on commercial real estate values, on the tax receipts, that the municipalities collect when the values of the real estate goes down. When the values go down, the real estate becomes, less productive from a tax base viewpoint for the cities that that rely on that revenue. So I think there's going to have to be an evolution in the way the tax bases are calculated, and in the way in people's expectations about the contribution of commercial real estate to the tax base of a municipality or a city. Again, I'm not an expert on commercial real estate, but there's a big corollary thread of research. Part of the work from home research is about the benefits to the company and the benefits to the employees and the effect on work. But there's another big vector of research that's about this question of real estate values.
Well, that's true, and use New York as a good example. There are sections in New York where, when the commuters leave, that section of town is a little bit dead. The financial district is a good example of that. I would say that it's a pretty simple repurposing.
Yeah.
Uh, the reason people live in the suburbs, they can't afford to live in the city. So as the use of commercial space goes down, that creates space availability to be repurposed to residential, which drives the cost of residential down
Yeah.
and makes cities 24-hour cities instead of 12-hour cities.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to Jane Jacobs and the Death and Life of the Great American City and the idea of mixed use, which
Yes.
for her, New York was a big part of the story. I think that when you're talking about converting commercial buildings, the building code has a lot to say about what you're able to do. In New York, for example, bedrooms have to have windows. It might even be the bathrooms have to have windows too. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, compare that to like the footprint of a big downtown, financial district or midtown, footprint of a commercial building that might be several hundred feet in each direction, square or rectangle, with a ton of interior space. And it's difficult to see how they're going to get residential space out of that. So only a percentage of the available, what we'll call like low performing commercial space, can actually be converted to residential. And that's something that the big architecture and interior design firms are thinking about, very carefully.
Oh, yeah. No, we chat with those folks all the time in design and the changes that need to be made. You mentioned changing the tax code. I'll make a comment. I think it'll be easier to change the building code than the tax code.
Maybe so.
Because they want the tax money and they can't get it unless they change the building code.
Yeah.
So time will tell how that works itself out, or time will tell if a new form of commuting is created that allows for us to grow into that space commercially.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And use it as we have. But we talk about commuting and virtual offices and this and that. I can't think of any of that without thinking about the metaverse.
Yeah.
We were promoting the concept of virtual reality officing back in 2016, 17, 18. In that period, saying this is on the way, the technology is there. This is one of the next generations of officing.
Yeah.
Which we always use the term officing. We think it's an activity, not a place. We've always believed that. And we've always believed also that there's no such thing as an occupant. There are only travelers.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you address your business model towards the metaverse, if you think the metaverse even has merit, relative to the conventional models that we're seeing today? What position do you see in this evolution going on? Mm-hmm. And do you think we'll all end up working inside of the metaverse as we work inside of our computers today? When I started business, we used to handwrite letters and mail them.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore for good reason. We found a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Think the metaverse is going to offer us better ways?
Well, for me, and I think for a lot of people, the word metaverse is a bit.
It's like virtual office.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
lots of different definitions.
Yeah, I think it's on a spectrum between confusing and polluted. Maybe. I mean, there is nothing wrong with the idea that virtual reality can provide entertainment opportunities, can provide technical training opportunities, can provide compact travel simulations. Like all of these things are interesting, and there are plenty of customers for things like that once the technology gets I think to a better place than where it is now. But when it comes to work, I mean, work is really a different category, because work is, it's for many of us, it's 8+ hours a day, 5 days a week or more. For some people, it's 10 hours a day. And first of all, just at the base level, the idea of wearing anything at all for that much time, if you don't absolutely have to, it's hard to make peace with. So our technology works with the software and hardware that's built into, to the laptops that people have already. And I think that built-in hardware. Like I'm not wearing any earphones or anything like that. I'm interacting with you here. This software is working wonderfully well, and we start with that set of hardware and software to deliver our experience. So I think the metaverse as an idea still has promise, again, in certain categories, but professional experiences that are not compact, that are open-ended, it's very hard to see anything encouraging about a requirement that in order to work with your colleagues, you're going to have to wear this device, or you're going to have a special camera and microphone setup and 20 microphones in your around your desk or something like that. I mean, this is not appealing. And it's also not necessary. Like you pointed out that, you used to write letters professionally and now you don't need to. I mean, the idea that there's a piece of hardware out there that's going to unlock the future, that a future that cannot possibly be unlocked without that hardware, is something that, people should be skeptical of.
Well, I know you got to be careful when you say that, because I started my first businesses without computers.
Yeah.
Those whole IBM typewriters were just fine.
Yeah.
So we've moved so far.
Sure.
I don't personally want to place any limitation on where we might go in the future. I've personally put on a headset for a couple of days and lived in the metaverse, with a company over in Europe for a couple of days. And the worst part of my experience was I spilled the coffee all over my desk because I didn't know where I was.
Well, that doesn't sound like that's so bad if that's the worst thing that happens.
I can do that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need the technology to spill your coffee. We do it all the time.
I agree with your assessment for two reasons. First is that I have a hard time staying glued to a computer screen for an hour, period. I actually have in my own daily schedule a 10-minute break between every meeting, and I get up and walk around, not just go to the restroom or something like that. I get up, I go outside, I stretch, I move around, and then I come back to do my next stint. I have to do that or I get all cranky. The other thing is, and this is hard even for you and I, we're used to all this video, we're used to everything, we're used to creating. We've not met, but we've created a good relationship personally. We're used to that. But in business or in all aspects of life, nonverbal communications are critical to really knowing someone, or really knowing what someone is thinking, or how to act and interact with them properly, especially in a group setting. You and I would read a one-on-one meeting differently than we would read a conference room meeting or a boardroom meeting, differently than we would read an audience if we were standing at a podium. Okay. And the ability to read your audience or the person that you're interacting with through not just your verbal skills, but your nonverbal skills is substantially limited by flat screens, by metaverse, whatever. These are limitations that we have to overcome, not just through technology. So I'm wondering how we'll be able to do that. I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
I think it's a next quest, a next generation quest. Whether it be holographic elements that we'll be considering, if that is really perfected, which it will be. Whether that becomes the bridge that's built or not, I don't know. But that's something that has to be considered as we go towards the future of work, is also.
Agreed.
Well, Adam, I'm so grateful to you for sharing your thoughts with us today. You've done a whole bunch of cool stuff. You really have, and I will say I'm a fan of what you're doing with Frameable. I like its organizational workflow structure better than I like trying to replicate an architect's floor plan and plugging people in offices. I honestly think it's a better way to work. It's much more spontaneous. And I'm going to make you send me a check or something after this meeting because I've been plugging you through the whole meeting, but that's not my intent. It's a genuine admiration for what you've done.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of our team. We work very hard. We are really committed to design, both graphic design and interaction design in our software. We believe a lot can be achieved through better design, and we try to build something that's flexible enough to support many different kinds of organizations and all of their preferences for the way work is done inside their organization. It's not going to be the same. And part of what we want is flexible tools. What we all want, out of our toolbox is for the tools to be flexible enough that we can, make our office in our image, so to speak.
Well, we really appreciate it and just want to see you keep leading us into the future of work.
I will do my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Take care.
My pleasure.